Most people don't walk away from a divorce feeling like a relationship expert. You tried, it blew up in your face, but now you're considering the possibility of starting something new, wanting to get it right this time, but you're not sure how. It took me a long time to realize that relationships are a mirror. They reflect parts of us we'd rather avoid. Those insecurities, maybe the control issues, the need for validation. Most people want deep connections, but few realize the real work begins when facing what's reflected back. What if the struggles in your relationship could be a gateway to your greatest growth, not just in love, but every part of your life? My guest today, Dominic, helps people to do exactly that. He's a relationship coach who works with people to use relationships as a tool for maximizing self-awareness and spiritual growth. Dominic, welcome.
Thank you, Jeff.
So today I want to talk about turning relationship friction into fuel for growth. And a lot of people talk about how relationships are mirrors, but help me to make the connection between that mirror and growth.
Yeah. I mean, I hear that phrase a lot, and I think there might be multiple ways to use it. I mean, I think the simple way is like the literal way. You know, you look in a real mirror to see yourself. And like a relationship, your partner is a mirror in the sense that if you kind of treat them as a space in which to see yourself, I think that's one way to see a mirror. And so I think we all enjoy the beginning of the relationship when things are going well. You know, they call that the honeymoon period. And that's a mirror too. In fact, if anything, we're experiencing parts of ourselves that's always there that we do get to enjoy. And this other person is helping us access that. And so, as you mentioned, like those friction points, I equate those to triggers. Like we experience this as unpleasantness, and instead of sitting in it, we look at our partner and saying, "Well, you're the source of this. This is not coming from me. This is your fault. This is what you're doing." And from that place, typically things just deteriorate and get worse.
How did you get to doing this sort of work around relationships and intimacy and consciousness?
No, Jeff, that's a good question. I still don't have like the best answer for that. And I think part of it is the reason why is because I don't have like a distinct turning point and like the heavens open and I realize, this information came in. I'll tell you, like to me, this is just a very ancient lesson. And I think we come into this life with whatever we've learned, say from our previous existence. And I think I at least had learned this lesson of whatever's coming up inside of me, that's really like on me. And I think life, my existence gave me an opportunity to keep learning that and learning it until I could actually give voice to it and share that with people. I guess another way of looking at this, I remember I got a very strong lesson of this when I was younger, because within my own family, I had a brother, God love him, but he was a bully. But I realized very literally, viscerally, this was going to go on for as long as I allowed it to. Establishing like a boundary or holding a standard for many people is something that they're very afraid to do, because they say, well, if I do this, that means you won't like me, or that means I will be a bad person, or that means that you will leave me. And that's not the right perspective to look at it. It's just, as they say, it's speaking your truth, which is not really a phrase I like to use a lot because, everyone has different truths. So it's really just speaking your perspective. But when something's not acceptable to you, you have to let that be known. And people will respond the way they want to respond. And if they say, I'm out of here, then point of fact, that's just highlighting incompatibility. And if they say, I wasn't aware of that, that was not my intention, let's work through this. I'd like us to reach a better place. I'd like you to be happier with me. I'd like us to have more harmony in our relationship. That's when you really start to step into your strength and achieve the benefit of having the standards and boundaries.
How do you get somebody to realize in their truth, or I forget the term you use, but
Perspective.
perspective? How do you get them to shift their perspective to recognize that reflection?
It can be tough. So, in my clients, the only people I work with, I mean, essentially these are people who are saying, I want to work on myself. And I must say, for a good part of my life, there's a lesson I needed to learn, which is be quiet. That was a personal lesson because, I had a lot of guidance in me. And what I realized is that unless people were looking for that guidance, there really There was no value in me saying anything. And so there's two ways that comes in. One person just has a lot of humility. You might say that they're an empty cup. And so they're saying, fill me with knowledge, fill me with information, fill me with perspectives. That's one way to do it. Those people are rare. Most people, they're not an empty cup. And so there's not an ability for other things to be added. They say, this is my set of perspectives. This is my truth. And I'm walking through the world with my filled cup and my set of truths, and that's the way it is. And so I can only work with people that have this realization, my full cup is not working for me. And so they're willing to look at other perspectives. So in a way, they're kind of like they're willing to empty that cup a little bit, maybe just a little bit, and let like a new perspective come in, which is what I'm sharing with them. And to your point, it can take a lot of time for people to reach that point. Some people may go their entire lifetime and never reach there because, existence is just like this. Your cup is going to get filled up with whatever. It gets filled up. It's neither a good or bad thing. And it's going to start from the time that you're born. And then you're going to go out into the world and you're going to find that some of those perspectives, they really, really work. You can see some people like discipline comes easy to them, or being responsible comes easy to them, or being truthful comes easy to them, and or earning money comes easy, and they just kind of glide through life. And so what you're witnessing, their set of perspectives in those dimensions are really good. It's working for them. And then there might be another set of perspectives that they have that's not. They might have a perspective of, when I argue with someone, I have to win. Or whatever comes out of my mouth must be right. Or when I'm listening to someone and they're disagreeing with me, they're attacking me, so I have to listen in order to respond. I would say that all of those perspectives are not efficient. They're not going to work for people. And so what's going to happen in life, let's say particularly in relationship, if you think you always have to be right, or you always have to win in a conversation or an argument or disagreement with your partner, eventually that relationship will blow up. And if it happens enough times, then eventually you're going to say to yourself, I'm going to do something different. Or you might say, I have no idea what's happening. Let me talk to someone else, because what I'm doing is not working. And so let me empty out my cup a little bit and see if there's something else that can come in that will help me in this dimension of relationships that I'm not doing well. Life is not for the faint of heart, as they say. It takes a lot of courage. And they say, life humbles you. And, sometimes you can pull out from the media that, examples of this. I'm not the biggest sports aficionado, but Tom Brady, I understand, super, super successful quarterback, maybe the most successful of all time. And yet that didn't translate to his relationship. And so that's not a finding fault. It's just observing the what is. And imagine if he had put that amount of effort. Imagine if any of us put the amount of effort he puts into training and working with coaches and working with experts. If he had put that amount of effort into being a partner and learning about relationships, he probably would have had different results. And I would say that's the same for all of us. I think most of us, we're trained. So I grew up in the US. So I feel like I was trained to study, to achieve, which is kind of like being right, because when you're achieving, there's a right way and a wrong way, and to get a good job, make a great income. So in no part of that, in that upbringing, did I receive any training on being in a relationship. And so for me, and I think for many other people, how to be in a relationship is really just kind of a blank space. And so in that blank space, we put in, what we've seen on TV, what we saw between our parents growing up, just a whole lot of, I would say, perspectives that are not tried and true, but they're just available. They're just sitting in that gap. And so we use them in our relationships. And then we learn in that dimension of relationships, we're terrible, or it's not working. And that baseball bat will keep hitting you. I mean, imagine you're being paid extremely well. You're getting promotions at the job. Every one of your coworkers, your boss tells you like how fantastic you are. And then you go home and your spouse is just telling you how uncaring you are, how incompetent you are, how bad you are at this. And you absolutely have no idea how to respond to that, because you're going to say, well, it can't be me that's the issue. It has to be you, because every place else in my life, like, I'm a star. Everyone else loves me. The fact that you don't love me and appreciate me means that the issue's with you. And I say, if one can step into that mirror symbolism, that mirror analogy at that point.
Why even bother doing this work? I imagine Tom Brady's very rich. So as soon as his wife walks out the door, I'm sure he's got a lineup of other women who want to be with him. Why spend time doing this work at all?
This may sound a bit harsh, but I would say you're just kind of spinning your wheels in existence or wasting time, because in the bigger picture, I just think we're here for one thing. It's to learn, it's to grow, it's to evolve. So imagine like going to school and you're not going to any of the classes, and you're not doing any of the homework. You're not trying to pick up any information. And you could ask the question, well, what's the point? Like, why would I do any of this? And it's like, well, it's because if you do take this information in, it will benefit you in how you flow through life later on. It will benefit you in opportunities that you'll have and opportunities that you'll be able to create. And it can also greatly affect the people that you interact with. And so I would say, in a very similar way, like, if we put this work in, we're going to create opportunities for ourselves that we wouldn't have if we didn't. And so some of these opportunities are like, we will have relationships with greater harmony, whether it be with our parents, our siblings. We're going to be able to handle conflict much better. In fact, we can get to places where our lives are nearly absent of conflict, because we're no longer have these energies in us that say pull conflict towards us. We may reach a point where we're kind of magnetized. We're magnetized for people that have also worked on themselves and have also increased their self-awareness. We're magnetized for people that want to work with us, people that want to be our friends, people that want to collaborate with us, people that want to build things with us. Ultimately, going back to this learning concept, if we're here to learn, to grow, to evolve, what we're doing is we're creating more and more order and structure out of what was previously and I think we're going in the same direction that the rest of the universe is going. Like, the universe is becoming more and more structured. Like, you look around creation, we see order and structure every place. I mean, that's everything that we see in the plant kingdom. At least you see, like, the evolution of things, and it gets to more and more complex organisms. If we do that, I think we're just going very much in the flow of nature, and we're also within the current lifetime, we're actually able to have experiences that benefit from that greater structure.
Imagine with somebody famous like that as well, that they're surrounded by or very superficial relationships. And I've found, as I do the inner work, my relationships, well, they either deepen or fall away.
Mm-hmm.
And I would imagine that doing this work, that seems like something you can't buy. That's something that people like that might not have put much time or effort into in the past, because they're focused on achieving this thing. You said that everybody has narcissistic tendencies. How do you reconcile those two things? People don't want bad relationships, but they've got narcissistic tendencies.
Well, I mean, I think the quick reconciliation is like, people have narcissistic tendencies even though they don't want them. And so therefore they're going to have bad relationships, are likely will. And so I think expanding on that, everyone has like narcissistic tendencies. Maybe a gentler way of saying that, we all have behaviors where we'll think about our needs above the needs of someone else. And so we'll take order and precedence for ourselves over someone else. And so the thing is, in relationships, the only way that they work is if there's love. And so, like, the very definition of love is you're going to think about the other person's happiness over yours. And so the narcissistic behavior a lot of times can show up as, well, let me just be right in this conversation, or let me be right in all the conversations, or let me show how my partner is wrong. It can show up as, well, I want to go to this spot on vacation, and I know you don't want to go here, but let me speak to you in a certain way where I manipulate or persuade you to where you'll only agree to go to this place. And so And I think that kind of starts, as a child. Because you think as a child, you're completely helpless. And so what you need to do is you need to figure out how to get a grown person, your mom, your dad, or maybe a caregiver, whoever, to do something for you. Bring me food, help me get warm, help me cool down, adjust me, change my diaper. And so, a lot of that looks like a lot of crying and stuff. And then you get older and you get the ability to speak, and then you'll see kids like throwing tantrums at times. And they're doing a tantrum because it's theater, it's acting. They're doing it to try to get like a result. And I think that's where we all kind of develop these narcissistic behaviors. And then we just carry that into adulthood. And we'll say, oh, wait, well, my partner doesn't want to eat where I want to eat tonight. Well, let me, give her the silent treatment, or let me kind of bully her into doing it. Or let me tell her all the reasons why, like, everyone hates where she wants to eat and why it's such a terrible place, and how everyone loves the place I'm proposing. And, the quick way to nip this in the bud is just to say, acknowledge what you want and just step into it, say, I want this. And then really try to figure out, okay, what does the other person want? And do I want to give the other person what they want? Or how would that feel to give the other person what they want? And so I think, life is always an invitation to step out of the poor behaviors we learned when we were younger, and that's why I say evolve and grow and become more conscious. Because once you start taking into account more of the wants and desires of others, you start to really enter into the phase of being able to have, why I say, more conscious relationships, and I would say more connected relationships. And I do want to make a small caveat there, because I think some people say, well, then you're just a doormat. You're always doing what other people want and stuff. And I say, well, first order of precedence. You think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Always they say at the bottom, food, clothing, shelter. So figure out whatever your needs are and take care of those. And typically those are just needs for safety, to feel security. And other people can't do that for you. Other people can't help you feel safe or secure. You have to figure that out for yourself. But once you can actually get to that place, then you can start to take care of other people, because then if they start to take advantage of you, you'll recognize it. You'll say, okay, I get it. I'm just being taken advantage of. I don't want to participate. We're going to change this. And so when you have your own safety and security, you're also able to stand up for yourself, and you're also able to establish what I mentioned earlier, those standards and boundaries.
How do you recognize the difference between getting your needs met versus those moments where you're, I don't know how else to say this, being a dick? You could make it a little harsher and call it narcissistic tendencies. How do you help somebody to start that process?
I love this question. I think there's a very clear answer. Your optimal decisions are going to come from a place where inside you already feel calm and peaceful, where you feel undisturbed. And so to me, that's the natural state of man, calm and peaceful. And I would say most people are not in that natural state. And so if I'm saying that, what I say, most people, they probably are being a dick when they're making decisions or speaking and everything else. And so step one is to get yourself to a place where you're calm and peaceful. For the moment, I'm not going to mention what could be a tremendous amount of work that could span years, working with, say, multiple professionals in different modalities to actually reach that natural state. But let's say somehow you figure out how to do that. The moment you're talking to someone and you realize that you're not feeling calm, you're not feeling centered, you're not feeling grounded, you're not feeling peaceful, that's when you know that I need to take a moment and I need to get myself back to that state, and then I'm going to respond to this person, or then I'm going to go into action, or then I'm going to go into a choice here. It's just, anytime where you're in these stages of feeling frustrated or angry or filled with guilt or shame, those are painful moments. And what you want to do is you want to get that away from you as quickly as possible. And so a lot of times that's where people react instead of respond. And when you react, that's where you create the opportunity to be a dick more often than not, and also maybe manipulate or take advantage of someone or just crush someone, because you're not doing that from your true self, that calm, peaceful place. You're doing it from your false self, or what you might say your egotistical self. So that's the clearest way I can say is just, step one in life, figure out how to be calm and peaceful in most moments, moment to moment. And then once you've done that, and that's a big step. And then once you've done that, then when you're interacting and you get triggered, because you will still get triggered. That's always going to happen. And so you feel that flash of anger or you feel that flash of shame. Just say, okay, I'm feeling this, and take a pause. You may need to walk away and get yourself back to that calm state. And then from there, re-engage.
I imagine that those, well, what I've experienced in myself, what I would classify as narcissistic traits, in those moments, everything feels chaotic inside.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think even to simplify it even more, it's just pause. That's it. I think this is a model from Viktor Frankl, his book, Man's Search for Meaning, and maybe even his larger work and what he did with his life. But he says you're going to have a stimulus, and then at a certain point, you're going to have a response. And he says, like, the time between is where your power in life is. Because if you go straight from stimulus to, let's say, reaction, no pause, then you're always going to be at the whim of whatever you're feeling in the moment. But if you receive the stimulus and then you pause, particularly when you feel triggered, and then you do something instead of reacting, you respond, and respond is like conscious choice, like you're choosing, you're going to have much better outcomes every time. And the more you take time to pause, the more you create the capability to actually pause. It's a strength. It's like going to the gym. If you want to, up your squat or deadlift or bench, like you keep going consistently again and again, and you track the numbers, and eventually they'll start moving. And it's not going to happen like in a week. It's going to happen over like many months. That's the same thing, building that capacity to pause. It's a skill that you have to build. And when that muscle gets really good, I mean, you can hang out in that pause for what seems like a very long time, but it's actually, for you or for people witnessing it, it's very brief. It almost seems automatic, but for you have spent like a lifetime in that pause before you actually go into action.
I like that imagery. You've spent a lifetime in that second, because that's almost wisdom, right? Like you're acting from wisdom in that split second. And I imagine that's what peak performance is, almost maximizing that fraction of a second between the stimulus and the reaction.
Mm-hmm.
Is if you can build that muscle up as much as possible.
Yeah, I mean, very much peak performance. I mean, you and I were actually talking about that, and I liken this whole thing of building self-awareness, like maximizing your peak performance. People focus on good things, right? More caffeine, more protein, more sleep, more sunlight, blah blah blah. But I think that the real long lasting hacks that trump all of those other ones, it's being able to master that pause, and it's being able to essentially, no matter what happens, you're able to step into that place where you can hold it. You can contain the energy of whatever happens, and you can hold it, and then you can make a conscious choice to whatever you think is the best action afterwards. That's where you take all the life experiences and the wisdom and the learnings, and even the learnings from the mistakes that you've made, and you encapsulate all that into like one moment, and you're able to move forward with that. To me, that's the ultimate way of maximizing your performance in life.
And to back that up, I imagine that'll support you in the boardroom as a high-powered executive, because somebody's trying to intimidate you into taking some crappy deal. It'll help you in sports. The other team's trying to pressure you. You just build up that muscle of having that extra time. It'll help you in relationships. The pretty girl from across the bar winks at you, and you need that. You can just contain that energy, and it's just so much more solid.
Yeah. And I think, although this applies to everyone, I think this is particularly important for men to develop. I think the world has this expectation for men much more so than women, is that you're going to be reliable. You're going to be dependable. You're going to be predictable. And not to say that we wouldn't want these things from women, but it's like when a man doesn't exhibit these characteristics, people, they don't feel safe, or they feel that there's a high amount of uncertainty or unpredictability with this individual. So yeah, imagine in the boardroom, there's tough negotiations going on. People are shouting at each other back and forth. And it's like, you're not shouting at all. You're hearing says, okay, so what I've heard is this. I would summarize it as this. And I think the core issue to focus on is this. Like, do you agree? That kind of just deflates all of that. And like people, it's like gravity pulls things towards it. It attracts. And so when you have that weight, that gravity, I mean, the world responds to it. They'll hear you speak. They'll see how you act. And they'll say, I want to follow this person. I have faith in this person. Like, I feel like I know what this person is going to do in a variety of different circumstances. Yeah, I think it's such an important point for men to grasp, because I think a lot of the way the world is, whether they recognize it or not, the world is expecting them. Other men are expecting them to have this characteristics. Other women are expecting them to have this. And if you can display these traits, then yeah, your performance or your way of navigating through the world is going to be much more smooth.
I worked with this client and we were doing the intake interview. That sounds a little more formal than I mean it to be. But I said, "Why do you want to do this work?" And he said, "I was at this networking event and there was a lot of high-powered people, very rich, very well dressed. And this guy came into the room and he wasn't particularly good looking. He wasn't particularly well dressed. I don't even think he was in great shape. But he said he just had this quality about him that just carried him through the room, much different from everybody else." And he said, "Whatever that quality is, I don't know what that is, but I want that." So I think to what you're saying, I think it's this undefinable quality, but it's incredibly attractive.
So, before we had this, we talked about spirituality. I know you have that focus in some of your talks. And, I encourage everyone to develop their spirituality. And to me, spirituality, I keep it very simple. Spirituality is increasing your self-awareness. Done. So it's a deep, deep dive internally. So in my pursuit, I attended a silent retreat. They call this like Vipassana. And in that, I learned that no, there's actually information in silence. Like when you can be silent and grounded, there's a huge channel of information that flows to you. Your observational abilities just expand and grow. Your ability to receive information and also make connections on what you receive is just tremendous.
To somebody who's just listening to this now, they're maybe on their phone all the time. They're just starting out on this journey. What's one simple practice they could do daily to become more conscious, to start developing this muscle?
I think the easiest way is just seek to understand. Seek to understand. And it's staying away from the place of like, well, I'm right. It's just being in a space of observing. And so it's funny how a lot of the things I would share with you, they do go back to ancient spiritual practices. It's be the observer. And so witness things, observe things, see things without, say, having to comment, without having to put your imprint on it. So observe, witness, and try to understand. So when someone's like saying something, try to understand, why are they saying it? Like, why do they believe what they're saying? Why do they think what they're saying is what are they trying to accomplish by speaking? And I'd say if you just do that as a practice, maybe for 15, 30 minutes a day, I think it will really help you amass what I call this internal gravity, this internal weight that will help bring up like the self-awareness. Because getting back to this mirror concept that we talked about earlier, what we see in other people, many times we're able to see it because we have the same thing going on in ourselves. And so just by us being able to witness and observe it, we're able to witness and observe things about ourselves that maybe we hadn't realized before. And I'll add a second thing, because I think it's very important to other things. So witness and observe is the first thing, but without judgment. Critical. Without judgment. You're not making anything right. You're not making anything wrong. You're just witnessing it. And so you're not making the other person or other people right or wrong. You're not making yourself right or wrong. Just in this moment where you're practicing it, you're just witnessing without judgment.
I could talk about this stuff all day. I love nerding out on this stuff. And I appreciate the mirror you've held up for me, that some of the things I'm recognizing. I want to ask one last question. What's one thing you're grateful for having gone through your journey?
Jeff, you have the tendency to ask good questions. What's one thing I'm grateful for? Again, just to simplify, I think I would say like health. I'm grateful for my health. I don't take it for granted. I would say I'm doing at least multiple things every day to keep it, to enhance it, like to grow it. And I think it's just fundamental to my existence and what I'm able to experience in my journey and how I'm able to grow. You've heard this phrase, people say, well, get your own house in order before you worry about the rest of the world. And I think when it comes to one's physical body, getting your own health in order, I think is one of the key tenets of growth. Because I would say, very personally, if I'm not feeling well, it's hard for me to make progress in any other dimension. So I'm really, really grateful. And I do say this to myself every day. And to God, I say thank you for my health. I think it serves me so well in life. And I love the fact that I'm able to just keep moving forward in so many different ways without having to go back and tend to something in my physical body just because it's I feel we just have this great relationship, my mind and spirit with my body. We're just very harmonious with each other, kind of this infinity loop, and we're just constantly supporting one another on our journey together.